Hey, what's up? This is Joe. I'm in Southwest Virginia, and I just picked up this Honda NC750X. And in the meantime, I've got the ST apart. There were a couple of factors that went into the decision for another bike. I was originally interested in maybe a mid-90s Harley Evo bagger. There's generally pretty easy access as far as doing maintenance tasks, valve adjustments, and things like that. It didn't facilitate removal of everything I had to remove on this to get it to this point. My mom absolutely loves me right now because I've got parts for this thing scattered all over the house and the garage and things like that. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I just couldn't find one within my budget that hadn't seriously been modified. People had a tendency to try to squeeze as much power as absolutely possible out of those bikes. Ultimately, more power than that 80 cubic inch motor was designed to produce. I don't really trust a bike that has had a lot of heavy engine work like that done to increase performance, and then ultimately just couldn't really find one within my budget that I could sort of swallow paying that kind of money for a bike of almost 30 years old. I did quite a bit of research on a number of bikes, and this was interesting to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, if what I'm hearing about it is true, it supposedly gets between 65 and 90 miles to the gallon. My last fill up was about 200 miles ago, and I've still got like a quarter tank. So out of a 3.8 gallon tank, pretty good gas mileage, I would say, but I haven't actually crunched any numbers yet. So I'll be curious to know what I'm actually getting. Additionally, a bike like this is highly maneuverable because they move the gas tank under the seat instead of right there. What's right there is actually a what they call a frunk, or a front trunk, big enough for a full face helmet. So I got this primarily with Mexico in mind, because a lot of the traffic and roads down there are pretty crazy, as you've seen from some of the videos. And for that matter, this is going to be easier to get in the woods and sneak into stealth camping spots and things like that. Another thing that was really attractive to me about this bike is the ease of maintenance. I mean, everything's right out in the open right here. I've got access to both of these engine covers on either side. If and when a charging system goes out, I can go right in there. I like the valve adjustment on it. All I have to do in order to adjust the valves is remove this radiator, and under there is a valve cover with a single overhead cam, which does not need to be removed to do the adjustment. Basically, there's 8 rocker arms coming off of the cam that actuate the valves, and there's just a little screw on top of them. So super simple. Obviously, I like the center stand. That's good. It had crash bars on it when I got it, hand guards. Touring windscreen was already on it. Installed a battery tender lead. Basically, the battery is accessed inside of this box. There's a cover. Take a couple of screws out. Your battery's right there. I could have routed it inside the case, but didn't really want to muck with any of the internal sort of guts of that frunk bucket. Anyhow, in the coming videos, I will show you everything I've done to try to get this roadworthy, and ultimately get it ready to head to Sturgis here in a few days. Meanwhile, I'm working on the ST and getting that ready to sell, cleaning out the rust of the upper and lower tanks, and installing a brand new factory OEM fuel pump. Hopefully the next guy that gets this bike won't have to go through what I've gone through to get it in good running order. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy this video of riding into the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. It's an area near and dear to my heart, and after 3 years of being away and touring some pretty exotic places, it was pretty cool to come back to these green mountains where I had spent so much time as a youth and grown up and learned to ride and things like that. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe. And as usual, I've included an optional donate link in the drop box if you'd like to contribute to this project. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the road. After getting my fuel pump replaced in the parking lot of a rural Tennessee town, I was headed back home just outside of Roanoke, Virginia. For this ride, I would be taking mostly back roads through the Cumberland Gap and into the Blue Ridge Mountains I once called home. I rode east into the sun until I reached Nashville. Once I got there, I was cursing the traffic and fast pace. Why was everybody in such a damn hurry to go seemingly nowhere? It would probably surprise a lot of people to learn that I normally ride the speed limit, or even less. It's a habit which has been ingrained from years of riding on unfamiliar roads in the US and abroad. Somewhere along the way, I just developed a serious disdain for highway riding. As soon as I could, I got back on some smaller roads and passed through some kind of a bizarre Tennessee crime scene. I really prefer to travel like this on these smaller roads, especially on long trips. It cuts the stress factor in half and seriously adds to the enjoyment of the ride. Once enormous and now heavily weathered by time, the Appalachian Mountains are some of the oldest in the world. Additionally, this part of the country is home to a certain breed of country folk colloquially known as the mountain hillbilly, as well as bluegrass music. A lot of the towns in this part of the country feature red brick construction, likely due to the dense red clay soil composition in these parts. It was interesting to come back and notice the prevalence of this style, especially after seeing so much block and stone construction in Mexico. It was fascinating to think how the look of a town was so much determined simply by what type of building materials the earth had provided. I kept well north of the traffic nightmare of Knoxville as I pressed on towards the Cumberland Gap. It was there I intended to bed down for the night and pick up the journey in the morning. If I've learned one thing in the last 3 years of camping in the woods, it's to set up in the most level place possible. This was made tricky due to the placement of this campground on the side of a mountain. I picked out the most level spot I could find, made camp, ate some rotisserie chicken, and called it a day. The next morning I picked up the journey into the Blue Ridge Mountains as I meandered my way back home. Located south of the Mason-Dixon line, these mountains were the site of several skirmishes during the Civil War. It's not hard to imagine soldiers marching through these hills, cold, filthy, and half-starving, having little if any food, perhaps picking off a deer here and there, more than likely not. Hiking between impossibly treacherous mountain ridges, only to encounter the enemy just around the bend. The men on which side having quite possibly been members of one's own family. As I began approaching my hometown, I had one more stop to make along the way. One of my favorite stores in all the world, Oasis World Market. They've got an awesome selection of just all kinds of food from around the world. When I lived here, this is a place that I would come, you know, about once every week, once every couple of weeks, whatever, and try a bunch of exotic stuff. I've never really seen a store that had quite the selection. I'm sure they're out there in some of the bigger cities and stuff, but yeah, this is absolutely one of my favorite stores. The nearby colleges of Virginia Tech and Radford University are home to a huge number of foreign students from all around the world. When I was a kid and my mom was working her way through school, we'd sometimes have international folks over, and I would get to try all kinds of different foods from East India, Venezuela, Burma, Ethiopia, you name it. For an adventurous kid, it was a bit like heaven. Those experiences contributed to a lifelong obsession with exotic places and willingness to try different foods. It was pure bliss to be back in this place again. I learned a lot about international cuisine over the years simply from shopping here and figuring out what the exotic ingredients were used for. There sure is a lot of really awesome food around the world if you just take the time to understand it. After stocking up on kimchi and Korean-style barbecue pork, I headed home. My all-time favorite road was on the way, and I damn sure wasn't missing that. This windy little stretch of country road takes you through Ellet Valley and under the Blacksburg Smart Road, which, at over 175 feet tall, was built for transportation technologies testing. It was this road where I'd first learned to ride, and through the process I would come to know every bump, curve, and gravel hazard on it. In short, I knew it like the back of my hand. About 5 years ago, I was right about where that Volkswagen is when a deer jumped out in front of me from the woods to the right. Fortunately, I was in a car, and the collision did little damage aside from crushing my front left fender. The deer wasn't as lucky and died on impact. I always try to keep that incident in mind when riding these country roads. After just over 3 years on the road, I had made it home.